Before, I'm Kenny Wallace. I'm a conservative activist here, and I've dealt with a lot of appeasers on a state and a national level. Of course, as I mentioned before, probably the most famous appeaser is Neville Chamberlain. He is the guy who basically let Hitler take over parts of France and Austria and then Czechoslovakia. Czechoslovakia being the worst because they actually were wanting to try to fight and defend their homeland, and they had a mountainous terrain area. It's called the Sudetenland, where they had built up defenses, and they were basically sold out and so that there would be peace in their time. And of course, as we all know, peace didn't happen. Hitler invaded a year later. But we have worthless politicians who are selling us out, just like the Czechs were, and their local politicians, local mayors. The mayor of Seattle gave up several blocks in a police precinct to a bunch of Chop communist thugs. By the way, ironically, appeasement often happens with socialists. Hitler, by the way, was a socialist, National Socialist, and these Antifa thugs are also socialist. So, yeah, they're socialism. The mayor of Minneapolis, he tried to dance with these thugs, tried to do everything to appease them, but then when they wanted, I think, to either defund or get rid of the police, he said no, and wouldn't you know it, they started booing him out and almost threatened to beat him up. I believe a state legislature in Wisconsin was beaten up and left unconscious on some grass. I saw that earlier today. Yeah, appeasement doesn't work against socialists. It just makes things worse. This should have been stopped in Minneapolis the second they went to an auto zone. The National Guard should have shot and stopped this, but they didn't call in the Guard to stop it there, and now it's spread to other cities. It's spread to other states. It's gotten people killed. David Dorn, I believe, the officer that was killed in I want to say Memphis. Poor young lady's sister that was killed. I showed a link to her video last week. I've shared it on my page, Maria. I'm trying to see how I can invite individuals. I usually get a list where I can just invite a whole group of individuals, and it's not letting me do that. I don't know why. It looks like they've done something different with the producer system here. But anyway, I had some technical difficulties when I started this. It just kept man. Anyway, here in the state of Arkansas, sadly, we have our own appeaser politicians. One of them is the mayor of Little Rock, Frank Scott Jr. He is, of course, Democrat. He happens to be a black guy. Not sure what all he did before mayor. I forget. But what he has currently done, first he tried to push for a tax increase before the Wuhan virus hit. He was going to try to sneak it in a special election in summer, and then after the Wuhan virus was given to us, courtesy of worthless politicians, that I'll mention later on, that kind of canceled his plans for that. And then when the Wuhan virus hit, he was the first to try to put on these curfews. And these curfews were, if you were out after a certain time, you could be stopped by police. I'm not sure if there was supposed to be a punishment or a fine or a fee if you were to be detained or not, but it was a curfew that was in place. Well, after a while, when the video surfaced of Derek Chauvin appearing to kill George Floyd, although he may have died due to fentanyl and even coronavirus, the video appears to show an officer by the name of Derek Chauvin, who, by the way, should have never been on the police force in the first place. He should have been removed by, again, local politicians who failed to do their job. Appears to show him killing George Floyd by putting his knee on his neck for about 9 minutes, and about 3 other officers not doing anything. It led to massive riots. Now, these riots could have been stopped instantly in Minneapolis had the National Guard and the police been pulled out, but the Minneapolis mayor there, he's an appeaser. He's a thin little white guy. I can't remember his name, but it doesn't matter. He ended up... Yes, Jimmy Collins, you're correct. It is enough to make a lot of people puke. he let them ride. It started with the AutoZone, and it just devolved from there, and then it spread to other cities and states, and now it's turned into communist takeovers of sections of cities. Of course, the cowardly mayor of Seattle has allowed the Chaz Chop clowns to take over that area. The mayor of the District of Columbia, allowed these thugs to vandalize statues, and they end up vandalizing monuments to real heroes. Where's the Spice Roll tea? I'm going to use it tomorrow. People who actually cared about black lives and other lives. Abraham Lincoln's monument was vandalized. But back to Frank Scott Jr., he decided to appease these people by first giving them the blessing to block I-630, an interstate that runs here between in Little Rock, also right by Arkansas Children's Hospital. So if you had a sick kid, you would have had to reroute. And then Mr. Frank Scott Jr. Just a little side note, earlier there was a thug by the name of Bradley Blackshire who deserved to be shot for having drugs and a prostitute and a stolen car, and then tried to run over Officer Stark. At that time, Frank Scott Jr. Allowed these BLM protesters who've been around since, of course, the Ferguson incident when the thug Michael Brown tried to beat up an officer, to block an area, Main Street, which is not a full interstate, but it's still in Broadway near City Hall area. So he's appeased the BLM thugs before. So this time he decided to appease them even more by letting them block an interstate. Then, I believe the following day, I believe it was June 1st, which I think is a Sunday if I'm not mistaken, he decided to march along with the BLM protesters. He did the thing, he tried to imitate Martin Luther King by doing the arm link for a little bit, and then marched from the Arkansas State Capitol to about Broadway. Pretty long distance, actually, and they marched pretty quickly, too. He didn't really say much during the march, by the way, there's a video of this taken by Jeremiah Stark, who shows this. Let me post the link to that, and I'll also post the section that I highlighted that I think is the most interesting. About an hour 35 into the video that I'm posting the link to, Frank Scott Jr. got hold of a bullhorn. He took off his mask, and he kind of repeated some of the chants he had done, which is like investigate the police, and no justice, no peace, and peace and love, I think, was another chant that they gave there. So he got his bullhorn. He's just starting to give a little speech there, and then he tries to tell people to go home because, of course, he has a curfew. Now, nobody's followed his curfew before. I'm not sure if it was this or something else, but apparently some of the people did not like his orders, and they proceeded to start throwing stuff at the appeasing mayor. They chunked stuff at him. I'm not sure what it was. It may have been baking soda, but they rejected his appeasement, and he had to get put into his Tahoe by his security and driven away. And he ran away. And then after he ran away, of course, the peace and love, Black Lives Matter people proceeded to smash windows at Arvest Bank over there at, I think, Broadway and Cross Street. They trashed, I don't know if they hit the federal building, but they smashed some windows at some offices near the Capitol. I think they burned the Association of Counties building or some other lobbyist building there. And I don't particularly, and on a side note, I don't particularly like all these lobbyists that are there. The Arkansas Public Association, they have that big giant building there. They don't deserve to be there. They've been a cause of pain and suffering for the state of Arkansas for years, but they don't deserve to have their buildings burned down and smashed. And they had nothing to do with George Floyd or anything else. Again, it's actually local politicians who failed to do their job. These people should be protesting in front of Amy Klobuchar's house, or the house of David Israel, that cowardly sheriff down in Florida that let that kid shoot up that school down there. But no, again, This is all about a project to hate all of America. It's called the 1619 Project, and it basically blames all of America for slavery and all the suffering that happens with black people. And of course, it's a damn lie. Most Americans had nothing to do with slavery. Our system is actually what gave more freedom and opportunities to blacks here and around the world than anything else. And along with everybody else, which is why we shouldn't be focusing on race at all. But that's what their group does. And you would think that Frank Scott Jr. Would have, figured this out and put his foot down after seeing what happened in Minneapolis and said, no, you're not going to smash windows, you can march, but then you go home. Should have had the Little Rock police come in and stop this crap, but no, they didn't. And so there was a couple of items smashed. Fortunately, we have a governor who does not want the state to turn into anarchy so that he can sell a road tax in November, who stopped that, and that is, of course, Asa Hutchinson. He is the Republican governor of the state of Arkansas. However, he has in the past appeased other groups like Big Medicine when he did Obamacare Medicaid expansion, the People's Republic of China with $50 million paper mill and other pet projects. And sadly he has appeased this group too. Let me stop this and I'll start to talk about him.